Okay, today we're going to look over reflections, and there's a rule for reflections. Okay, just remember, if they reflect over the x-axis, then the opposite changes. So the rule is x, y changes into, if it's reflecting over the x, the opposite's going to change. So x stays the same and your change is in your y. Okay? We can say it's the opposite of y. So it's a negative y. But that doesn't mean every time it's going to be a negative, because if you already have a negative, it becomes a positive. So it is the difference. It's the opposite of y. Whatever your y is, it's going to be the opposite. And if it reflects over the y-axis, the rule would be, so again, if it's the y, the x is affected. It's the opposite. It doesn't affect the y, it does the x, affects the x. So that would be a change, the opposite of your x, and your y stays. So remember that rule. And it's really easy once we get to look at it in a problem, but that is your rule. Okay, reflections of our shapes. If we look at G, and it's your original G, it's going to be 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Your L is 1, 1, 2. Your Q, all these are your originals, would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So 4, negative 1. Okay? And I want it to reflect across the x-axis. So I want you to highlight where it's going to reflect over. And remember, x, y. And we just went over our rules. So when you have an x, y, and it's reflecting over your x-axis, what is affected? It's not the x, it's the y. So your x will stay the same, your y is the opposite. So let's go ahead and look at this. If my G is 3, 4, so G prime, and that's what we call the new figure, is G prime will be, you're going to keep the x the same, but you're going to change the y. Because if we go over 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, oh, 3, go over 3, and now I want it to reflect, I've got to go down 1, 2, 3, 4. And that is my G prime. It's my new figure. So, put x there. It's 3. I went over 3, and my y now becomes negative 4. And label it G prime. My L prime is going to be, if we just do the rule, my x is 1, my y is going to turn into a negative 2. Now let's prove it. Okay, my L is here. I want to reflect it over the x-axis, so I want it to come down here. So I'm going over 1 and I'm going down 1, 2. And that is L prime. Then we have our Q. Just by a rule, I know that my X will stay the same. My Y will change. Well, it's a -1. So if I'm going to change it, even a negative and a negative becomes a positive, so it will become 1. Let's check it on the graph. Go over 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I want it to reflect over the x-axis. So I go up 1, and that is my Q prime. And there it is reflected over the x-axis. Okay, let's look at number 2. I'm going to scratch this out and say the y-axis. So we have U, original, is going to be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. -3 because we went backwards, and up 5. We went to the left of 0. That's my original. So my U prime, so let's write the rule. If it's the X, Y, the new rule for a reflection over the y-axis is going to affect what? It's going to affect my X because it affects the opposite. So X now will become the opposite of whatever X was, and Y stays the same. Again, this is reflecting over our y-axis. You can highlight it to make sure we're going over this. So when I reflect, I'm reflecting over it. So if this is my rule, my X is going to change. So if it's a -3, it becomes a +3. And 5 will stay the same. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. U prime. And then my L originally is 1, 2, 3, -3, because I'm going left 0, up 1. L prime, again, look at your rule. It's crossing over the X, so the Y, so your X changes. If it's a -3, it becomes a +3. And then 1 will stay the same. 1, 2, 3, 1. And that's L prime. And we have the X up here, and it is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so X prime, well, the opposite of 0 is 0, so it actually stays the same. And we can label that X prime. So it just reflected over the y-axis. Number 3. Again, we're going to change this to y-axis. So again, if it's the y, x, y, reflects over your y-axis. So which one's going to change? If you're reflecting over y, your x has to go opposite. Okay, so let's look. We have I original would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, -5, 0. So I prime, if I'm reflecting over my y, I'm wanting it to come over here, and the y is going to affect your x. So it's going to be the opposite because I want to reflect over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0. And that's prime. Then we go to y. Original would be 0, 1, 2. So y prime. Remember, it's going to affect your x, and opposite of 0 is 0, 2. So again, it's going to be in the same spot. Then we have t equals 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. So t prime is going to be opposite of my x, -4, 4. Oh, wait, that's what the original is. Didn't put my negative up here. So this becomes positive. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is t prime. So it has now reflected over the y-axis. Let's look at number 4. We're going to reflect over the x-axis. So I want to highlight it to know I'm going over it. So this is going to end up over here when I reflect it. So your rule of xy is going to become, once we reflect it over the x. So if I'm reflecting over the x, your y changes. X stays the same, y becomes opposite. So let's look. M original is 1, 2, 3, 0. So M prime, remember your y is the only thing that's going to change. It's actually going to stay there because the opposite of 0 is 0. So it's also M prime. P was 1, 2, 3, 4, and down 1. So my P prime is going to be 4. Change your y. Negative, negative now becomes a positive before 1. P prime. D is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4. So D prime, again, if we're going over the x-axis, your y will change. 5 stays, 4 changes. So it would be going down 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's D prime. And then we have Z. Originally would be 1, 2, 3, and up 1, 2, 3. So Z prime will be 3, -3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Z prime. and it just reflected over. Okay, I will continue in part 2 if you still have questions.